All right, folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. We're doing another worst album edition. So this is a little bit different than our normal episodes. In this, we're actually agreeing, and we're agreeing on what the worst album is. So we're basically going to go over the album, kind of discuss what we're decided is the worst album. Today we're doing Motorhead. Let's dive right in. Martin, what do you think is the worst Motorhead album?
Well, okay. So before we get to an actual analysis of the album, so what we did, the band is Motorhead, of course, and what we did is we did a little bit of a survey to see what people think the worst album is. When we do these episodes, we have to more or less agree on the album between the three of us, the cabal of doing these things. And Marco basically said March or Die right away. Nick agreed. It was my first choice. I mean, I was thinking March or Die. I mean, people have talked about odd ones along the later ones. But I personally think, that most of those later albums are pretty good. Another one that I had my sights set on a little bit was 1916. But no, I mean, me and my buddies all through the years, I think everybody sort of can come down and at least agree that March or Die is one of the worst ones. Like I say, at this point in the episode, we don't exactly start judging yet. But yeah, so I guess the next thing to sort of give a little context on this record. So what happens with this album is that very importantly, Lemmy moves from England to LA in 1990. That's a big move. It kind of throws the band into a little bit of turmoil. Phil Campbell has been there all along. There's been Wurzel. There was Phil Taylor, of course, in the band. The original classic drummer. But one thing that happens with this move, well, okay. So first of all, there's an earlier album, 1916, and again, that's one that is a little bit casual, a little bit poppy, a little bit novelty, and it had people kind of thinking, great title, cool album cover, but it had people wondering, is this move to LA a good thing? People talk about basically Lemmy was enamored with the Rainbow Room, right? And that's basically where he set up. His apartment was not far from there. People said he was always holding court at the I guess the video games, or maybe the pinball machines, or maybe they had gambling machines in there. I don't know. I know Lemmy was a big gambler too, but basically this was his place where he held court. So yeah, they're making this album there, but there is a falling out with Phil Taylor, and essentially what happens is, and this is one good thing that comes out of this is at the tail end of the process, Mickey D joins the band, and he's the drummer right up until the end, right up until Lemmy's death. But the main drummer on the album is Tommy Aldridge, which we will talk about a little further. But yeah, so there's a little bit of background on the album. I'm actually going to turn it over to Nick now and hear his assessment of it. So now what we're going to do is Nick's going to tell you a little bit about why we picked this as the worst Motorhead album. Then I'm going to talk about it a little bit. So yeah, take her away, Nick.
Okay, yeah. So it's a fine album. It's not. It's certainly not a bad record. I think that it's just it's not. Doesn't quite have the aggression or the speed or that punkiness of something like Ace of Spades that was really good. It doesn't have the heaviness of something like Orgasmatron. It kind of just flounders in the middle of Motorhead to me has almost like a few different distinct sounds, right? When they're being heavy, they're kind of slower and thicker sounding almost. Then they have their more punk kind of rock and roll, like Ace of Spades influenced. Some people call it like speed metal-ish. And March or Die is just kind of there, right? I think the songs I like on it the most are Stand and I Ain't No Nice Guy After All, and those aren't really even songs that sound like Motorhead, really.
It's true, yeah.
And that's kind of a thing that goes through the album, is that the rest of the songs, they all sound like one generation is probably the wrong word, one era of Motorhead or another, but it's been better. It's been done better by them several times in each one by this point, right? It's not a standout record, and I think Motorhead is what, 22 or 23 albums. I think there's a little bit of debate on one of them whether it counts as a release or not. So when you have that many records, even a solid 7 out of 10, or even if you want to be a little harsh, like a 6 out of 10, is just not. It's not even worth listening to, really, when they have so much material that at this point, if you were to sit down and say, I want to listen to Motorhead, why would you even listen to March or Die? You could have a full day's worth of material to listen to before you even get to the bad stuff. So what, like, and like I said, it's not even a bad album. Like, you listen to it, Lemmy's voice is still there. It's still fine. It's not his best. And it like, at their worst, they're still Motorhead. They're still great. It's just not, at all reaching the heights that they're capable of reaching, right?
Yeah.
So that's my assessment. I assume you're going to have some more cognizant points about why it's not.
Yeah,
good.
and I'd be probably a little harsher on it. So the other big thing that happens at this point, this is part of the big, the big fabled, we're on Sony briefly. So he's in LA. They're on a major label. And the other thing going into this is that Lemmy has had some success and a really nice payday writing some songs for Ozzy's album and getting on No More Tears. So on this album, you also have them redoing HELLRAISER. And I actually think HELLRAISER is a terrible song anyways, and it's probably even worse in this version than on the Ozzy album. So yeah, just first of all, in a general sense, this record really suffers from kind of bad production. You don't really get the Lemmy stun bass as much on it. It doesn't have a lot of high end on it. I mean, it really doesn't feel like it's got even a lot of hi-hat on it. It's just like bass drum, snare drum, bass drum. You know what I mean? Like one of those really sort of simple recordings. And just to run through it a little. So first of all, there's 11 songs on it. It's actually a short album. It's 46 minutes long. I don't think the album title is all that great, and I don't think the album cover is all that great. I mean, the album after this, for some bizarre reason, it's awesome, Bastards. And it has almost like a similar album cover, but it's, this has got this black and white cover. It's just kind of dull. It's neither here nor there. But yeah, some really bad things about it. It's got a cover of Ted Nugent's Cat Scratch Fever, which I never really ever thought was that great a song. And here, there's no big improvement on it. Stand as Nick, as you point out, it's kind of an interesting song lyrically. It's a little different. It's kind of an anthem, first song on the album. I didn't think Jack the Ripper was that bad, but it's kind of, this album has a stiffness to it. And the reason it has a stiffness to it, I interviewed Tommy Aldridge at one point. We were talking about one of the recent Whitesnake albums, and I asked him a little bit about this album. So he was called in by Phil Carson, the manager, to drum on this because there was this falling out with Phil Taylor. And, his first reaction was, oh, my God, I don't want to upset Phil. I love Phil. I love all the guys. I don't want to take his gig, blah, blah, blah. He even requested that he be like a ghosted drummer. Yeah, that was his term, an anonymous drummer on the project. But he says, for some reason, it didn't work out that way. And everybody knew that I was the drummer on this record. But the other thing he said is that we're going to do this thing. He was told we're going to do this thing to a click track. So it's done with a click. Lemmy didn't want to play with a click. So Lemmy hit the road, probably went back to the Rainbow. And basically, Tommy was left to do this album. He says in one day, if not, he said maybe it was 2 days. I can't quite remember, but it was literally very, very quick. He knew none of the music before. He was there to do it with a click. With Phil on guitars. So he said Phil played guitar, so I knew where I was in the song, kind of thing. So it's definitely not a great Tommy Aldridge performance either. It's just very bare bones. So that's a problem with the sound on it. Yeah, I Ain't No Nice Guy is an acoustic song with some piano and Slash plays on it and Ozzy's guesting on it. So you got this sort of corporate thing going on with, we're on a major label. We got these guest stars. I'm playing this ballad. Maybe we'll have a hit with this ballad. Like I say, Hellraiser's on it. There's 2 songs, Asylum Choir and Too Good to Be True, which I think are just too similar to each other. They're just sort of these, up-tempo, hummable Motorhead songs. Kind of decent. It's got a horrible stripper blues song on it called You Better Run. I hate songs that sound like that. Just it's like one of those old 50s blues classics. I can't remember which one. I'm a Man, possibly. Um,
It's funny that you mention like the corporate sounding stuff.
yeah.
Because I think they actually re-recorded "You Better Run" for a kids movie. I looked this up and I thought it was so funny for SpongeBob
Yes, that's
SquarePants,
right.
and they
Yeah.
re-recorded it as like "You Gotta Swim," which
Yeah.
like it's kind of funny, but it's a pretty
Yeah.
un-Motorhead thing, and it's funny that
Yeah.
it comes
Yeah.
from this
Yeah.
album. It's pretty indicative. Sorry to
Sure.
interrupt.
Yeah. Okay. So Name in Vain is like the fastest one on it, but it even sounds almost like a drum machine because Tommy's kind of drumming like a machine. He's drumming to a machine, right? Um, and then it's got one of these, the closing track on it is one of these, let's try to make the atmospheric historical war song, but March or Die is really long and it's really boring. Like it's almost like it's got this strange production value on it. Nothing much happens on the song. You think they're only going to do that sloggy, murky thing for a while and then it's going to pick up, but it kind of never does. So, on a short album, there's a lot not to like on this album. And like I say, it's a really, really safe choice. I mean, I've read, every once in a while you see a reviewer or, in temporal space when the album comes out or whatever, people have said, oh, Overnight Sensation's not great, or Hammered's the worst album they ever did, and all this stuff. Frankly, I think basically starting at Bastards all the way to the end, they're all really good albums. That's one of the cool things about Motorhead is that the catalog, basically they and they made a lot of records, and yes, granted they are hard to tell apart from each other because the productions kind of settle on this really strong, powerful, distorted, rocking, production value. I mean, some are a little better than others, but essentially all the records sound really good and gritty after this, and all the writing like greatly improved. So really with Motorhead, there really is only this this little pocket where it seems like Lemmy is almost corrupted by this move to LA and things don't quite work out. And it's really only for these couple of albums. And most people, will kind of agree that it is these couple albums. And just one other point to make, a contentious one that people used to not like very much is Another Perfect Day, the one with Brian Robertson. But now people love that record. I love that record. It's one of my favorite Motorhead albums. So you definitely, Nick and I couldn't have picked that one for this episode. But yeah, March or Die, basically, there's quite a consensus. I don't think we're upsetting too many people in picking this record as the one that is the worst album. So there you go.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just like one thing to add is I think the album overall is still a good album. But March or Die, the song, is like probably the worst Motorhead song I've ever heard. It's
it's like pulling teeth trying
boring.
to get.
Yeah. Just that chorus is bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they've written other things that people really don't like. Like I say that, like the slow stripper blues song in this album, I probably even hate that more than March or Die. And then across other albums, there are real kind of novelty things once in a while, Ramones and Angel City, and they'll do an odd straight boogie woogie song or a ballad or another dirge, a dirge that doesn't take off. So they do a few things all along the catalog that annoy people, but very little. I mean, basically Motorhead's catalog is really, really good. Oddly, another one that, and this is probably a little contentious and more like our Contrarians thing, but another album that a lot of people that I personally would put way down the list is the very first Motorhead album. I don't think it's that good either. But come the second one, Overkill, through Bomber, through Ace of Spades, basically almost the whole rest of the catalog, there's a lot of entertaining stuff. I mean, it's just a great, great catalog. But this one, there's a lot not to like of this one.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've probably put the nail in the coffin there.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're both supposed to give this a grade out of 10. So I heard yours. Have you changed it all? Like what are you going to give this out of 10?
No, I think it's a solid 7 out of 10. Like
Wow.
I think this is
Okay.
an average, like for a like for a Motorhead album, probably lower, like
Mhm.
6 out of 10. But I think just as it stands on its own, as a record itself,
Yeah.
I think I think it's just I really like Motorhead's sound, right?
Yeah.
I've seen people. I wish I could remember who said it. I wanted to attribute the quote to them, but someone said that maybe it was you that Motorhead is a lot like AC/DC, and that they had a sound, and there's lots and lots and lots of songs, and a bunch of them sound really, really similar, but that sound is so good that you don't care, right? You listen to Motorhead and you're usually happy.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not that. I'm not sure what it's missing. I think it's probably speed. Like even the faster songs are just a little too slow and energy. But if it's for me, it's a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, and it's funny, these middle years, there are things to complain about. I mean, there's a lot of there's some not great stuff on Orgasmatron and rock and roll and that. But I often get into complaints with people about, this is one band that I actually do pick that example of. I mean, it's a really hard concept to explain, but there are certain bands where I think if you took their later material and dropped it onto the early albums, that later material would stand up even better than those early albums. So obviously the early albums are completely sacrosanct, and people think of that as the golden period. I mean, of course, this is my Motorhead book, and it's literally only on the original. This only goes up to Iron Fist. So I'm the guy that wrote the book on the early stuff. But I honestly like a lot of the there's the the little bookmark that came with it. I actually like some of the later albums even more than Bomber and Overkill, and even, oh my God, Ace of Spades, right?
Oh, really?
So, and there's my March or Die right there. So that's
it sounds like we might have to have a normal Contrarians episode.
Yeah, it's funny, and then people say, oh, but you wrote a book on the early one, but I don't care. I mean, I actually, this is one band where I think a lot of those later albums are just start to finish just way more accomplished. I love the Phil era, the Phil Campbell era. And Lemmy, every time I would interview Lemmy, he would get his back up about people, romanticizing and the nostalgia that goes with the early era. And his famous quote to me that I always remember is that, you listen to some of that early stuff and it's a bit ropey compared to what we're doing now. That's a very good term for it. It is a little ropey and simple and raw. And I think they maintained that total aggression and bite all through the Phil era on all those later albums. Motorizer. I mean, I love Motorizer, right? So I could almost say, so this goes with that weird theory I have that if you did a blind taste test and you grabbed songs of those later albums and just parachuted it into Ace of Spades, you'd go, that's the best song on Ace of Spades. And then you'd have to go, nope, that's from Motorizer. You know what I mean? So it's a weird thing. But okay, so my grade, sorry for rambling on. My grade, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. So what we do on this show, on the Worst Album Show, is we put the two grades together. So we have a 5 and we have a 7. So our grade for this show on this record, I guess, is 6 out of 10, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably the score that it deserves, right? I think you're a little more offended by it than I am, probably, because you've listened to more of their stuff and And for me, I just I still have a soft spot for just that sound in general, even bastardized as it is on this album.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, but
all right,
there we have it.
There we go. So let us know what you think in the comments below. We would love to hear if we're totally off base. And if you're just going to criticize us, you tell us what you think the most or the worst Motorhead album is and why. don't just give us the title. You got to defend it when you when you're going to disagree with us. Defend. Tell us what you think the worst Motorhead album is. Yeah, we'd love to hear what you think of the show. Obviously, go watch our regular Contrarians shows. Those are the ones, from the original concept where the idea is Nick or Marco and myself, we get together as a pair, and somebody has to feel it in their heart that their favorite album by a band is a contrarian choice. It's a weird choice. So that's, we've done many of those episodes as well. And Nick, how many of these have we done? Are we up to what, 4 or 5 of them, 6 of them? I know you guys have done Red Hot Chili Peppers, Slayer. We've done, Marco and I did Van Halen 3.
I think this I think this is number 5.
Okay.
Or is it number 4? I'm not sure. Let me.
So anyways, we've got the 2 concepts, right? So and it's funny with the worst album one, you find people even just get upset, I find, Nick, with the whole idea of just complaining about anything, right? So when you say worst album, I mean, it's kind of a negative episode of a negative show, right? Here we are putting down Motorhead. How many people ever put down Motorhead? I certainly don't like doing it too often. But yeah, it's an interesting show. So I think we do get some complaints about it. But we're going to continue on with this. We're brave. We will argue our points. So we'll continue on with this, and we'll continue on with the other Contrarians shows. And Nick, anything to add, or shall we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah, I'd just like to say, we answer. We're active in the comments. So if you have something you want to say to us, like Martin said, just say it to us. We'll be happy to debate with you. And a lot of times we agree with some of the complaints. We agree that, how can you say this about Motorhead? Motorhead's amazing. Well, we agree. That's why we're saying their absolute worst album is a 6 out of 10, which is an above average, like on a 1 to 10 scale, right? 5 is your average. So
you bring up a point, because we did do one on Led Zeppelin Present, right? And people complained. And it's like literally, and not all the complaints are in the comments. So go to our Facebook page, and I have my own Facebook page, and it came up there, and there was a lot of debate. But people would say Led Zeppelin doesn't have a worst album, and we fired back and said every band has a worst album and a best album. So even if you love everything they do, there still is one that's got to be at the bottom. Maybe it's tied with 2 or 3 at the bottom. Maybe they're all tied for you, but in your head and in your heart, there is a worst album. So that's all we're doing with this show. We are finding something that pretty much there is a consensus that this is a pretty bad album by that band.
Yeah, and hey, I think we're just happy to see there's still people passionate enough about this sort of music that they'll get angry, right? So
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I just like to say, if you can like, and if you haven't subscribed, if you can try to subscribe, that helps us a lot. The channel is growing, and it's grown farther than I think we had expected, a little faster. So we'd like to see how far that can go. So if you can also share, and if you have like-minded friends, let them know about the show. We'd love to, get them in here and hear their opinions as well in the comments. So
absolutely.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yes, thanks. And until next time, go play some Motorhead.